Hey guys, and welcome to something a bit different here on Learn Irish Online this week. This is going to be the first of a series of lectures, probably 3 or 4 lectures coming out over the next few months, looking at something a bit different. I suppose on Learn Irish Online, we always kind of focus in on the language itself, whether it's grammar or pronunciation or different words you can use, different verbs, mistakes people often make. But today we're going to be zooming out, and across these lectures we're going to be zooming out and looking at the bigger picture of the language in general, and looking essentially at how you think about the language, how you think about studying, how you structure it in your mind, and hopefully it's going to make it a lot easier, because a lot of people have the desire to learn Irish, but essentially they don't know where to start or don't know what they should be doing day by day to achieve that. So hopefully these lectures should help with that. Today's one's going to be fairly straightforward in terms of what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about studying Irish, but really this will be applicable for essentially any language. Okay, so even if you're not studying Irish, I will, go back and reference Gaeilge a lot of times throughout this lecture. But realistically, even if you're studying Italian, German, Danish, whatever it might be, I think 80-90% of the stuff in this lecture could still be very useful for you. Firstly, who am I? If you're watching this for the first time or you're on our channel for the first time, my name is Liam. I'm from Galway in Ireland, but I live in the south of Spain, in Seville. I founded Learn Irish Online about a year and a half ago now, at the start of 2023, to essentially create an online hub which made it really easy to learn actual real-life Irish quickly and learn how to understand Irish quickly, regardless of where you lived in the world, regardless of who you had around you, and regardless of what opportunities you had to speak the language. We create a load of different content. The main one is our weekly podcast, Gaeilge Weekly, which is free on Spotify. The links for all those things will be down below if you are learning Irish and want to check out what we have to offer. We also have our membership if you want to sign up there over on patreon.com/Learn Irish Online. A load of different video and podcast series aimed at, again, helping you be able to speak real Irish and understand real Irish quickly and without the stress and the hassle that is so often associated with any language, but specifically with Irish and a lot of the stigma around it. Okay, what I'm going to be talking about today, essentially a lot of it's going to be essentially the main study methods that I think you should apply. And how have I come up with these? It's a mix of two things, a mix of what has worked for me in the past. So that's when I learned Spanish again, and I've become, I suppose, a C1 level now in Spanish, and also learning Italian at the moment. So it's a mix of what has worked for me, but everyone learns differently. So it's also a mix of what has worked for my students. Over the last few years, I've taught many people, dozens of people, Irish 101 across the world, and what has worked for them and what I've observed has helped them learn quickly, and what hasn't worked for certain people as well. I've combined that all together to come up with a few different methods and a few different thoughts on it, which I'll explain over the next 45 minutes or so. That's a bit of an estimate. 45 minutes, who knows, might be twice that length, might be half that length. What are we going to be talking about? We're going to start off with the base principles, which essentially are just the main things I want you to always keep in mind when studying Irish, when studying any language. We don't want to stray too far away from those regardless of what we do. We're going to talk a little bit about how with any language, the speaking, writing, listening and reading, those are the 4 pillars. And the main thing of this lecture is going to be number 3 there, one main study method for each. We're going to have this really clearly laid out. It's not going to get too complex. It's going to be fairly simple, not that it's going to be easy to do, but simple in terms of what you do have to do after this. Honestly, once we get through the main study methods, that will be the kind of meat and bones of this lecture. I'll just be talking a little bit then about working on your weak points, how to really revise in terms of going over what you've previously learned. What should we learn off by heart? Surrounding yourself with the language regardless of where you might be in the world. And the last few closing points, tips and encouragement. Okay, because this is all meant to be fun, and it's all something you're meant to enjoy. If you're coming in with the expectation that you'll just work really hard and not enjoy learning language for 2 years, and then you'll be really happy at the end because you've learned it, it's not going to work. Trust me, you're not going to be able to keep it up and sustain that practice. So that's going to be one of our base principles, essentially, is to kind of keep it fun and enjoy it throughout. So let's talk about those base principles. Firstly, I'm going to skip over direct replicating for now, because that's essentially the main method or the main idea I have around learning languages. We're going to talk loads about that in about 2 or 3 minutes time. But the other ones, keep it simple. Because again, if you kind of build it up to the thing where, every Monday I need to do exactly 1 hour of practice. Tuesday I do 20 minutes. I do exactly 35 minutes on Wednesday. Wednesday's practice is I'm going to say this word 5 times in a row. I'm spinning on my head, and it's all really complex and kind of convoluted. It's going to be much tougher to keep it up. And listen, a lot of this isn't rocket science. You want to learn a language, you're going to have to do it consistently for probably several years, or certainly at least a year or two, to get to a decent level. So therefore, we all know that, so we need to have kind of a study method and a routine that is fairly simple, and it's not going to overwhelm us too much. Okay, and also in terms of the study methods they're going to be fairly simple. It's not going to be anything too convoluted or tough to understand. It's going to be really kind of going back to our direct replication, which I'll go to in more detail in a few minutes. It's really just trying to replicate what a normal conversation would be like, replicate what writing a normal email or text would be like, or writing a paragraph would be like, replicating what it would be like listening to someone. We're just going to replicate over and over again, but more about that in a minute. So keep it simple. Number 3, tiny steps every day, guys. And the main thing here is do not get discouraged. Guys, I know the feeling. I have it all the time. Now, when I'm learning Italian at the moment, where I switch on a podcast, I feel, I've worked it up in my mind that I'm doing really well. I've made a lot of progress. I turn on a podcast, and for 5 minutes, I can barely understand a word because of someone's accent, or just because I'm not at that level yet, or so on. That is not what matters. If you're comparing yourself to that, you're essentially comparing yourself to a native speaker or a fully fluent speaker, which is crazy when you've only been learning the language maybe 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, maybe even less, maybe more. The main thing is that on any days when you are studying, because you probably won't study every day, which is absolutely fine, any days where you are studying or listening to something or speaking or blah, 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 when you go to bed at night, you've learned, let's say, 3 things that you didn't know that morning. That is all that matters. Okay, even if you watch a 20-minute video on YouTube about grammar and someone trying to explain grammar to you, and a lot of it you don't get, well, I don't mean this in a rude way, but what do you expect? Do you expect to be an expert in that grammar tense after a 20-minute video? No, the main thing is that you learn 3 or 4 things that you didn't know, and you're just constantly moving forward. So please don't get discouraged. I know it's so easy to think, this is impossible. Once you keep on moving forward every day or every second day, whatever it is, you're going to get to where you want to get to. Okay, then after that, obviously the bigger that step is every day, the quicker you get to where you want to get to. But those are the 2 things that matter, really. Okay, firstly, are you taking a step forward every day? And secondly, and the secondary thing, really less important, is how big is that step. But the main thing is to make sure there is some type of a step. Number 4, guys, enjoy it. As I've already touched on, the main thing with this is it should not be a chore. To sit down and study Irish or whatever language should not be a chore, because it should be set up in a way that you enjoy it, and you should be able to tailor it for yourself that you enjoy it in that way, listening to stuff that you enjoy, speaking about stuff that you find interesting. Okay, doing it when you want to do it, rather than saying I have to do an hour and a half every day and doing too much. Why not just say, okay, I'm just going to do half an hour or 45 minutes every second day, because I know if I do more, it'll become a chore and I won't enjoy it. So tailor it so that you actually enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it anymore, you have to look at, is there something I can do here to change the way I'm studying, or change what I'm studying, or what time of the day I'm studying, whatever it is. Find what's making this unenjoyable, what would make it more enjoyable, or if there's nothing, maybe take a break. Or maybe, let's be realistic about it, maybe it's not for you. Maybe then, you have to stop and try and learn another language, or you maybe realize, okay, this isn't for me. But just because you've gone so far doesn't mean you can't kind of say, okay, listen, I don't think I want to keep going with this. There's no point continuing unless you enjoy it. So, direct replicating, which I skipped over. What is it? Well, firstly, what does a piano and Jose Mourinho have to do with this? It's a quote that I really like that he said, I think 15, 20 years ago, saying, a great pianist doesn't run around the piano or do push-ups with his fingers. To be great, he must play the piano. Let's break this down really simply. The vast majority of people who are watching this lecture want to learn Irish or whatever language it is, I would imagine, because you want to get to a situation where me and you, or whoever it is, we could sit down for a coffee or a beer, whatever it is, and we could just chat away like this for half an hour, 2 hours in Irish, and wouldn't be too difficult. I know some people learn it for work, some people learn it maybe because they want to bring up the kids in that language, but even then it's essentially the same thing. You want to get to a level where you can speak comfortably, even if you're making mistakes. You can express yourself and express most of the ideas you want to express. Somebody repeats back whatever ideas they have, and you can understand it. That's kind of the start, middle of an end of it for most people. For 5% of people, something like that. They might have a specific thing. They're going to work in a specific industry. They need those terms. They're not actually interested in just general conversation. But the vast majority of people, that's what they want it for. That mean you can speak like this in whatever language, and it's comfortable, it's not awkward, and there's no issues with it. So what do you need? Okay, to get to that level, what do you need? You need to be good at speaking, and you need to be good at understanding. Okay, perfect. So hopefully this all makes sense so far. Well, how do I get better at speaking? By speaking. The point Jose Mourinho is trying to make there is, in football you have all these different tactics and loads of different drills. This man runs around this man, you go to this cone, go to this cone. Or maybe a lot of gym work, strength and conditioning, which is all great. That all helps you in a roundabout way. But really, if you want to get better at football, you play football. If you want to get better at playing the piano, you play the piano. So direct replicating is more so moving away from things like Duolingo and watching an hour video about a certain grammar tense or whatever it might be, learning off 20 random words to do with the house and the home on your first day of learning the language, and it's looking at, we're going to directly replicate, and as close as possible, replicate what that conversation would be like if it was just me and you chatting away. Okay? We're going to directly replicate listening to Irish and listening to normal everyday Irish. So it's not going to be really structured. It's not going to be like someone reading out the news off a script. No, we're going to try and listen to just normal everyday conversation like I'm talking now, essentially the normal kind of flow and the actual words that are used. Okay, in terms of writing, it's going to be the same. We're not going to be doing specific writing exercises in terms of, answer these questions from this kind of paragraph that I've given you and who did this or why did they do that like you would have at school. No, we're just going to, as closely as possible, replicate what writing, if you're fully fluent, would be like anyway, in terms of writing a text message, writing a story, whatever it is that you're into writing. Okay, so I'm not bashing things like Duolingo and other apps like that, but again, they go a very roundabout way to get there. If you imagine you're a car traveling at 50 kilometers an hour, you want to go from this point to this point. This point is whatever level you want to get to in the language. Is it faster to go 50 kilometers an hour that way, or 50 kilometers an hour all the way around, still 50, and then get to that point? I think you know the answer. So we're really going to looking at replicating exactly what someone who is fully fluent would do every day. Okay. What does this circle have to do with it? I think this is a good analogy which will help you imagine and understand what we're talking about. Specifically, I suppose, about speaking, if we take that example, and this is kind of jumping a bit ahead to the idea of the main study method we're going to have for speaking. I want you to imagine you're right in the center of that circle. Okay, you can probably see the mouse here. So if we're right here, let's say this area on the outside of the circle is fluency. I don't like the term fluency. I don't think it really exists, but it's fluency or whatever level you want to get to, because not everyone's trying to be fluent. A lot of people just want to be comfortable in basic conversation or whatever. So the outside is the level you want to get to. So a lot of the stuff we're going to do is essentially, we're going to act almost like we are a fluent speaker. We're going to be doing what a fluent or native speaker would be doing. And we're going to start running off one of these directions, and straight away, because we're not at that level, we're going to run into roadblocks. So I want you to imagine all these black lines are just little roadblocks. So we're going to hit this roadblock here. Maybe when I'm speaking, for example, I start off, I'm very basic in the language. All I know is hello and the verb to be. And I say, Tigwich, Tome. Okay, I'm just having a little solo podcast here by myself, chatting away. I want to say I'm tired. I don't know what the word for tired is. So that kind of tired is represented by this roadblock. It's something I don't know. It's something blocking me from getting out to here. This is when I can just go, oh, Smishalium, Tommy Carolina Svehadish, Tommy Mahoney Seville, blah blah blah. I can say basically anything. Okay, so I run to the roadblock. I look it up, it's Tershuk. That roadblock is removed. It's gone. So next time I can run a bit further. I can say Tigwich, Inyo Tommy Tershuk, Mar is the word for because, Mar Ni Warme Moron. Okay, I don't know the word for sleep. So I didn't get much sleep. So that's the next roadblock. So therefore remove that. And essentially what we're doing is we're trying to drive our mind in a load of different directions to hit all these roadblocks, because we can't remove a roadblock unless we hit it. Okay, so in other words, you can't learn a word unless you realize you didn't know it. And this is great because it runs us into all the words, all the terms, all the grammar rules that actually come up all the time. If you think of when you're at school, the first chapter in whatever your German or your French textbook or your Irish textbook, even when you were very young, was likely about the home or your family. So you would have learned words in the first chapter like semi-detached house, second cousin, grandmother, and so on. How often do we use those words compared to words such as excuse me, so, then, because, as, like, sorry? All these words that we're using all the time, but often you're not taught straight away. Again, if I sit here for 20 minutes and just try and speak to myself or try and write out a paragraph or write out a little story in Irish, it's going to be borderline impossible to do it without the words that come up all the time. If there's a word such as so, which is marshin in Irish, and it comes up often, well, it's going to come up pretty quickly with direct replication. I'm not going to be able to avoid it because, again, I'm actually replicating a conversation, or I'm actually listening to what everyday normal Irish is. Realistic Irish, I think, is a good word. So therefore, it's going to come up pretty quickly. And this way, these first few circles, essentially, they symbolize all the words that come up all the time. The top 500, 1,000 most common words, the top 3 or 4 grammar rules that come up all the time. So you're learning things in direct proportion to how often they come up, and in other words, how important they are. Okay, so that's going to be an idea I want you to keep in mind. The idea then is this is the same circle, but maybe a year, 2 years into learning the language, this is what it looks like. So you still have your block here, but this is only really complicated stuff. So I can start off here. I can say Tommy Mahoney in Seville, Inyo, Tommy Igenu Leachta, Erlina, Egminu, Alon Rudi Fuin Goelga, Agus Thadra and Goelga. I can go any which way. I'm comfortable. Maybe I don't know the genitive case or the Siri or something quite difficult in Irish, and that's what this line represents. The idea is at some point, again, they're further out, they're less important because they come up less often, and you learn them, and all of a sudden that ring is completely gone and you've got to the level you want to get to. Okay? So, just again on a few more of the points, but we'll get through these quickly and get through the main study methods. Keep it simple. I've already spoke about this. Speaking, listening, writing, reading. Those are your 4 main points. I think while you're studying, you want to keep that in mind. You could even do it, okay, today I'm doing an hour. It's half an hour speaking, half an hour listening. In 2 days, I'm going to do another hour, half an hour writing, half an hour reading. Okay, and we're going to have 1 main method for each, which again, really going to look at just replicating what writing, reading, listening, speaking would be like anyway, or what you write, read, speak and listen to in English or whatever your first language is. Each method directly replicates the action itself, as we say there. This way it's easier to stay consistent rather than having 3 different methods for each one, and don't overcomplicate things, as Jose Mourinho kind of hinted at there. Complex doesn't equal effective. If you want to get better at speaking, this isn't rocket science. You have to speak. If you want to get better at writing, you have to write, and so on. The more you complicate it, the tougher it's going to be to stay consistent with it. Tiny steps every day. Again, I've kind of covered a lot of this. If you were able to understand everything, you'd already be fluent. That's an important point. Sometimes people knock on a podcast or a TV show in Irish, no subtitles or anything, and they can't understand much or they can't follow along, and they say, oh, I'm so far off it. But hold on, let's say you could understand everything that's being said there. What would that mean, or who is able to understand everything? Well, basically anyone who's fully fluent, or whatever, B2, C1 level at least, if you follow the European framework of languages, which again, I'm not a big fan of, but it might be a good reference for some people. You have to be at a fairly decent level in the language to be able to knock on a podcast in Irish and understand everything. So, okay, you don't understand it, but again, not being rude, why would you be able to understand it when you've only been learning for 6 months, a year, whatever it is? You know, if you were, you wouldn't need any of this. You'd already have learned the language. You would have already got to the level you would have liked to have gotten to. So again, don't always be comparing yourself to kind of fluent speakers or native speakers or something at a fluent level, let's say. Also, what's the rush? You know, actually ask yourself, okay, I want to learn Irish, but again, I think our society, my generation especially, we're always in such a rush. Maybe just living in the south of Spain has changed my opinion on this. Relax. You know, there's no, okay, again, taking tiny steps, and people say, no, but I have to be at this level in 6 months or a year. Well, no, once you're always getting better, that's the main thing. Okay, so there's no major rush, really. Ask yourself, what is the rush? You know, unless, again, you have a specific circumstance, you're doing an exam in 6 months and you have to be at this level, of course, then there's a bit more of a rush. But even then, break it down into each month, how much you have to get better by, or each week. It's probably not as much as you think. And that brings me on to the last point again, small steps. It may not seem like much over the course of a year, which is a nice time scale to think about a language. It will make a big difference, even if you're just studying every second day. And enjoy it, because this is all meant to be fun. Why in the world would you be doing it if it's not fun? Okay, it's going to be great fun when you're at the level you want to get to. Let's call that level X for the rest of the lecture, whatever level that is, instead of saying fluency, because people have different goals. Level X, okay? So instead of kind of saying, oh, I'll do this for 2 years and I'll be at level X and then I'll be happy then. Life doesn't work like that in general, and why not be happy then and also be happy throughout the 2 years and have great fun while learning the language? It should not be a chore. Don't be afraid to take breaks, guys, even if that's for weeks. If you feel like you need to take 2 or 3 weeks off, that's fine. Follow your gut, do what you want to do when you want to do it. Don't be forcing yourself to say, have to do an hour every day for a year. What's going to happen? You're going to get 3 days in, you're going to be busy one day, or you forget to do it, or you didn't have the motivation, you stopped enjoying it, and you said, well, I've lost already, I may as well stop now. Do it when you like. And again, stuff like speak about what you like, listen to content, watch content that you like and find interesting. More about that later in this. Okay, so what are the main methods? Firstly, number 1, the speaking method. I'm going to call it the Foclóir method. Okay. So the Foclóir method is our main method for what is the most important thing for most people, which is speaking. I've already kind of hinted at it with that circle analogy, but essentially what you're going to do, and this is the most important part of the lecture, the next 2 or 3 minutes, I think, is you're going to sit down, preferably with pen or paper. Everybody finds something different, but I'm a big believer, really, pen and paper is better. It certainly works better for me, and I think for most people it works better, and you're in no rush in terms of writing down. For here, you're not going to be writing down big paragraphs, so it makes very little difference in terms of the time. You're going to sit down a pen and paper and some sort of a dictionary. It can be a physical dictionary, it can be an online dictionary. Online ones, I suppose, are good, and Foclóir.ie we're going to talk about in a minute, which is the main one I would recommend, and it's the one I've named this method after them because they do such amazing work, and it is by far and away, for me anyway, the best resource in terms of learning Irish online. Sit down on pen and paper, you're going to start speaking, because that could literally be, and you only need a very base level in the language to do this. You might only know the basic greetings and the base question words, such as how, what, where, when, why, and you know a tiny bit about pronunciation. That's fine. So you can literally go, this is taking an extreme example where you only know how to say hello, how are you, you're by yourself, start chatting, gee which, okay, I want to say my name is Liam, I don't know how to say that. Perfect, we can look that up. That's something, and you know, this is why I suppose this method's a small bit easier if you have the base foundations and you at least know a few things in the language, such as where are you from, I'm from here, how are you, I'm good, what's your name, my name's Liam. Literally just those things, because those things are tougher to look up in a dictionary. If you have no level in the language or those things are new to you, we have a beginner's course over on Learn Irish Online. I'm not trying to sell it, but it's got all those things covered. The link is down below anyway. But let's say even if it was that, we can look up, especially now with the internet. Okay, how do I introduce myself in Irish? It's Mr. Liam or Liam Sanam Dum. Perfect. So what I do, and you can see here with the examples, I write it down in Irish, little dash, and I write it down in English. You could even do 2 columns and just have 1 column here and 1 column there, okay, and have them properly split so they're all on the same kind of axis vertically. That can help as well for then covering them up and learning them after. But let's say you're at a bit of a higher level. So this example I've given, maybe I'm speaking about, again, how my day has been. And I want to say, okay, I'm enjoying the day so far. So I know, okay, I'm enjoying Tomig Bunch Tatniv as, crap, I forget the word for day. No problem. I look up my dictionary or Foclóir.ie, which we'll go to in a minute. It's law. I write it down in Irish. I write it down in English. Perfect. That's another roadblock removed. I go back to the start. So I don't have to go all the way back to the start, but just to that sentence at least. Okay, Tomig Bunch Tatniv as an law. Hopefully I will have a chance. So Lecunajay by, I don't know the word for chance. Okay, perfect. I look it up, write it down in Irish, write it down in English. Make sure to write it down. That's important for two reasons. One, it reinforces it. Two, you can go back and revise it later, which you need to do. Great. So that's another word done. I need to ask my friends. So Kaime Kesh Machar, are we going to have dinner tonight on Wilmuts? But again, you might not know on Wilmuts. So you go, you look it up, Foclóir.ie or your physical dictionary. Again, that's a verb, so it'll be tougher to find in the physical dictionary. Or your glance card, which I'll mention later. And then again, we have it. So you're straight away just on this general conversation with yourself, almost like a solo podcast. You're forcing yourself to run into these roadblocks, even if it's literally the first word you want to say. And you're really quickly learning all the words that you need. So again, if there's a word that's going to come up all the time, or if there's something specific to your situation. For me, for example, living in Spain, I use on spawn for Spain way more than any of you do when you're speaking Irish, I'm sure. Unless you're living in Spain or you come here a lot. That's specific to my situation. So again, a textbook or a group class will not teach me that, while this method will. It teaches you. And you can, again, talking about wanting to enjoy it, speak about the stuff you like. When I'm doing this with Italian now, I love Formula 1. I just previewed the Formula 1 race at the weekend in my head. And I speak about who I think is going to win or what I'm looking forward to from the race. And again, realistically, if me and you go for a coffee, what are we going to talk about? Apart from the small chat and what we've both been up to, which again, this covers talking about your day, talking about what you did yesterday, we're also going to be talking about things we're interested in. When's the last time you sat down for lunch with someone and the full conversation, or any of the conversation, was about stuff neither of you two are interested in? You'll talk about your own interests, their interests, and mainly stuff that you both have an interest in. So again, learn the stuff that you're interested in. Rather than going through textbook, learn all the stuff in chapter 1. The textbook doesn't know what you like and what you're going to be talking about. So it's great for that. Not just words again. So if you think the grammar might not be right in this sentence, perfect. That's another roadblock. Don't avoid. This is a key point. Seek what you don't know. Don't avoid that. Or let's say if you're talking to yourself or to someone else about where you want to go on the holidays next year, and really you want to go to Italy, but you don't know the word for Italy, do not say Spain because you know the word for Spain. Embrace the fact, and in fact seek out what you don't know. Say, brilliant. Now, that's another thing I don't know, so I can now learn that, and then I have it. Rather than saying, oh, I'll just avoid that. Or, I actually have 2 sons, but I don't know how to say 2 when counting people, so I'll say 3 because I know that. No, learn it. Learn it because then you won't be anxious about it after. That's how I drive myself on with languages. The anxiety drives me on. Okay, this might be a negative way of looking at it, but rather than saying, oh, I'll just be more comfortable now, I say, no, because that's going to, it's going to F me over in the future, really, if I don't know that word, so I want to learn it now. So therefore, if I have a situation in the future where I need it or I need to be able to understand it, I have it. So that's a massive point. One of the biggest 5 points I would say in this whole lecture, guys, is seek out what you don't know. Be willing to make mistakes, okay? And the great thing about this, you can do this 24/7. Of course, you won't always have your notebook in front of you or Foclóir.ie, but you can still do it in the way you could be driving into work. Speak in Irish in your head, even if it's very basic. Tome egg, driving. Driving. I'll add it to my list on my phone or somewhere, or I'll just keep it in my head. I must look up driving later. Tome egg tamans, could see an ober. Neil me egg tanu, lesh an ober. I'm not looking forward to work. And just, even then, if it's not new stuff you're running into, you're just repeating the stuff you know, it's firing on your brain the whole time. So rather than sitting down once every 3 days and doing half an hour of Irish study, it's firing away for literally 1 sentence or 2 sentences every 10 or 15 minutes throughout the day, or every hour. So it's like a tap. Ed Sheeran talks about this in Creativity. He always says If you turn on a tap every day, it comes out, it's fluid, almost like fluent. It's coming out, there's no problem, it's clean. But if you turn on a tap once every 2 or 3 months, then it's going to be spluttering, it's going to be all dirty water. So again, and if someone, you've probably got that feeling before with languages where somebody out of the blue speaks to you in a certain language, maybe when you're abroad and you have a bit of Spanish or French or whatever the language is, and you're a bit like, oh crap, and you look back on it after and say, I had the words to respond to that, but because you're not always firing it off in your head, your synapses can't do it quickly enough. So that's a great thing as well. It's 24/7 you can be doing this. Let's talk about Foclóir.ie. Okay, so how does Foclóir.ie work? Why is it so good? So let's go to day that we talked about earlier. So I can just type it in. Firstly, I get all the different types of word for day. Okay, day is not a great example. Key is a very good example in English. Key, there's 13 different uses for key in English, because it could be the key to open a door, or it could be the key on a musical instrument. It could be the adjective, something is key, it's crucial or critical, as we see there on the tábhachtach. It's obviously different ones each time. For the simple one here, the normal one, a key to open a lock or a device, we have it used in sentences here. We can see it in the plural. We can see how it might change, or how it might be used. So again, if I'm saying not ignition key, but I'm saying tuning key or whatever, it could be one of the adjectives that's not even there. I see still how it would be structured. Key would be here, and then we'd have the adjective after in the genitive. Okay, we also know then whether it's masculine or feminine by what's here. We can click on this, we get what it is in the singular, in the genitive singular, in the plural, and you'd very rarely use the plural genitive. We know it's a noun, and so on. Okay, you also get pronunciation. This probably won't show up because I don't think I have desktop audio on. But Ira now, you might hear it on the mic. I'm hearing the Connacht, the Munster, and the Ulster pronunciation of that word. Also, even if it's not a specific word, at the bottom you have anytime something comes up in a sentence. So that's also really useful, and you can also do reverse search. So if I type in glass, even though it is an English to Irish dictionary, it will say here this is an English to Irish dictionary, but it does the reverse search. So I can kind of find all these words around glass here, or in what way they're used. The key of C, the key of D, the key of E, F, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that is very useful. On top of that, I can put in full phrases. So if I said I didn't go, let's see, does I didn't go show up in a sentence? It did. Oh, be niyaki. So again, I didn't go is niyaki me, but we can see in this context you would just say niyaki. You could say both really in that case, or I myself didn't go. Oh, that's how we put the emphasis on it. So it's a good way of seeing how a certain term or word might be used in real life in the language. Okay, and everything on Foclóir.ie is accurate as well. Okay, so Foclóir.ie, really, really useful. Those are the main functions of it. You can also go into a verb, click the drop down menu of a verb and see it in every tense. I'd recommend it. Okay, so that's our main method for speaking. What are some issues with this? How can you tackle them? One is you won't be asked questions. This was a big thing with me that I discovered. I learned Spanish this way, then I moved to Spain and people are barking stuff at me in Spanish, and I was like, crap, I've never had the experience of somebody asking me something. So it takes me a while to compute that, but you need to be able to respond, I suppose, fast. Otherwise, you can't just stand there and go, oh, well, he said this and that. You need to be able to respond, straight back to them normally after a second or two. Anyway, so this is tricky. So you kind of need to, I suppose, replicate this in a way. A good way is just put on a podcast where there's two guests on and wait for the podcast host or whoever's asking a question to ask a question. And then just pause and respond to that question as if you're the podcast guest, or respond with your own opinion. Also, just create the questions yourself, just makes sense. Ask yourself in English so you can do it quick. So, okay, what would I say if someone said, how was your day yesterday? Okay, it was great. I enjoyed it. So you can kind of come up with it quickly in English or whatever your first language is, and then do the answer as well. It's easy to forget base profile questions, because how often, especially if you've got an okay language, how often are you going to be asking yourself, where are you from? What do you do? What job do you have? So make sure to go back over those and know that if someone asks you, where are you from? Where do you live? that you know how to reply. It's brilliant being able to say all these great things about what you're doing today, and a lot of things about your plans for the weekends, or these higher level stuff. But if somebody asks you then where are you from, and you're like, and you say it wrong, it kind of undermines it. So always make sure you don't forget the base stuff, and don't be afraid to go back over that and revise what you know. Because again, if you're studying by yourself especially, you won't get asked those questions a lot, but in real life you will. They're some of the first things you get asked. So think about, if you just met someone new, kind of stimulate that conversation, imagine what they would ask you. You control the subject, which can be tricky as well, okay, because you get to steer it whichever way you want to go. But in real life conversation, someone might interrupt you and say, tell me more about that, or is that similar to this? So try and almost, again, probe yourself with that. Imagine someone's interrupting you, changing the subject, and you have to speak about that subject. Okay? Right, 2, listening. How do we improve our listening? We listen. In terms of direct replicating, I keep on messing that up. It's a tough one to pronounce. Say it 3 times fast. There is no other one where it is more direct than listening. And listening is a pure numbers game, I find. People ask, with subtitles, without subtitles, with a transcript, blah, blah, blah. A mix of everything. Guys, just listen to as much as you can. There's not too many tricks. I've shown you 1 or 2 tricks there with the speaking, with the writing as well. There'll be some things you can use. What's the other one? The reading as well. Different methods you can use. With the listening, you just have to listen to as much as possible. Key thing and a few tips is listen to different people. Don't always be listening to the same person again and again. I know I have my podcast, which some people here might listen to, and it's, I suppose, good for people because you have a lot of different levels and you have simpler versions of the podcast, which most other Irish language podcasts don't, because they're not made for learners. But even if you're not getting much, you're barely understanding anything, listen to other podcasts. Excuse me, guys, listen to other podcasts. Put it at 0.75 speed, put it at with the transcript on like we see here, which I'll mention in a minute. There's loads of different things which you can do, but you have to be listening to stuff every day. And as tough as it seems and as overwhelming as it can seem often, trust me, it does get easier over time. You'll be amazed. Just commit to saying for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm going to listen to some Irish every day, even if it's only 10-15 minutes. Different dialects, different people, different shows, different styles of Irish. The way older people speak Irish nowadays compared to younger people is quite different. Listen to as much as you can and it will get easier. Different sources, obviously face-to-face if you've got someone to speak with, which is great. But at Learn Irish Online we focus a lot, I suppose, at people, or we target a lot people who don't have that opportunity and don't live around areas where they can speak Irish every day to people. TG Cahir and the TG Cahir player, I don't believe is geo-blocked around the world. I can certainly get it here in Spain and across most of Europe, if not all of Europe, you can. That's very useful. Different podcasts as well. There's loads of different podcasts, and there will be a sheet. Actually, it's in the description of this video down below, and I'll reference it later on, which gives you loads of different things you can watch on TG Cahir, the podcasts you can follow, social media pages to follow, different resources to have more Irish in your life. And a great new thing that came out 1 year ago is Spotify Read Along. So if you listen to podcasts on Spotify, which I would recommend for this reason, they Read Along, which essentially is an AI generated live transcript, and it is available in Irish. So it's available on my podcast and a lot of podcasts in Irish, and essentially you just scroll down and you get this read along. It's free with Spotify, or certainly with Spotify Premium anyway, and it just goes along with the words as you're saying them. And considering Irish is a minority language, it does a really good job at not only translating the Irish, but a podcast like mine where I switch between English and Irish a lot, it's able to follow that. So here I was saying Nílan Foclóir.ie Method. Achnis Mo was probably didn't quite pick up what I was saying there. Just on scale the Acu, leis an Gaeilge, so just the story they had with Irish, and you can follow along. Won't be perfect, it will make some mistakes, but after a while you should be able to recognize where those mistakes are, and it's very useful if you're learning and you're struggling to find any podcast where you can actually understand everything without, or understand much at all without the subtitles. So just a mix of everything, and as I say, as frustrating as it gets, it does get easier, guys. Just stick with it, and once you start to feel it become a tiny bit easier, you'll get great encouragement from that and you'll want to continue. The first bit is the hardest. Reading. What are we going to do for reading? Similar to speaking method. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to start off with an article and we're going to keep reading until we find something we don't know. We're going to look that up in a dictionary, online, whatever it might be. Maybe we say, I've learned that before. It's in my notes somewhere. It's on one of the previous pages. It could be the word law, like what we looked at earlier. We go back, we find it in our notes and we revise it and we learn it off. Okay? And again, you're just making yourself run into things. So if I put up one article for you, it might take you half an hour, even more, to get through that news article online, because every line you're going, I don't know what that is, I don't know what this is. But again, you're writing them all down in Irish and in English in the same book. You can put this all in the same place as you're speaking, and you just have pages upon pages of different words and different rules and ideas down there. Once it's structured and you can read through them, okay, that's the main thing. And, you know, the first article might take 45 minutes to go through, but a lot of that stuff will be in the second article. So if I get you to read through an article of similar length, the second time might only take you 30 minutes. Because again, a lot of the stuff you've already learned in article 1. And if the stuff that's come up in every article, it's going to come up in every article and you're going to have to learn it. So again, replicating, saying, well, what would I be doing if I was a fluent speaker and I could understand all of this perfectly? I would just be reading through like blah, 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 like I would be with a news article in English on my phone now, or like you are listening to this video right now. So what do? I try and do that, and maybe literally the first word I do not know. That is absolutely fine. I run as my roadblock, I lift it, and I keep on running out in the same direction. Okay. So an example here, let's take this. This was a kind of headline or sub-headline from an article last week. So maybe I go, Céatá iginchint na fearna. And I go, iginchint, I have no idea, Lord above, what is that? What does it mean? So all I do, I can go over to Foclóir.ie again. Let's put in iginchint. Let's see, does it show up? It does, okay? So I'm not going to pay too much attention because iginchint, that's to tell a lie, it's to fib. So actually, if I started reading through these, I pretty quickly realize inchint is to tell or to kind of convey to someone. Okay, and I can do that with pretty much any word here. So who is telling na fearna? I know it's the truth. Ger, Kate O'Connell, gur ear, maybe I don't know. Urhi, I'm not sure about Urhi. So I looked that up, but again, it does become frustrating at the start, but each time it gets easier because a lot of the words, maybe the next article you read, Urhi is there, so you've learned that. What other words? With Ger is in irregular verbs, that would be very common, so you learned that. Dortsheet, obviously, you know, when you're starting off, if you're at a low level, you don't want to be reading something this complicated. You want to try and find something a bit easier, because otherwise it will be literally every word that you're dealing with, and some of those words won't be that useful. But in general, for most people, for most levels, something like this will work, okay? And again, if there's a word that's coming up every paragraph, you're not going to get very far before you have to learn it here. So it's a great way of learning stuff in direct proportion to how often it comes up. Where to read, again, this is kind of included in the document later, but extraG.ie for news, Tuairisc.ie for news, Erevio, I'd really recommend more than any extraG and Erevio. extraG is the best one because the Irish on it is slightly easier, I think. Now, it's not crazy easy. I think this is actually from extraG, but it's slightly easier, and on top of that, it's about loads of different stories. It's nicely laid out aesthetically. You've got, let me just show it to you, you've got stories from news, sport, politics, and loads of different ideas here. So we've got entertainment here. Is that Ronan Keating? It is. You've got something about an investigation here. You've got the GEA, you've got Hector, you've got Trump. It's nicely laid out, and in some of them as well, you will have the more complicated words written in English in brackets. Okay, we don't have them here, I think. Let's see if they're in any of the other ones. Yes, here. So we have this one written Caribbean, because again, some people might not know that. Okay, cigar for Tulog. Right, so it's better for learners. The Irish is slightly easier, and articles that more people will likely be interested in. Tuairisc.ie is trickier Irish, higher level, and it's more so focused on stories within Ireland, specifically about Irish and the Irish language often. Erevio is pretty good. Nos.ie, more so opinion stuff and colour stuff about life, travel, culture, as well as some news, but not too much. RT.ie/Gaeilge, Nuacht, very straight-laced news, but quite well written. Neonella.ie, a bit more Ulster Irish, but again, it's got a nice mix of stories and aesthetically looks quite good. Loads of places you can follow on social media. I mean, most of these are on social media, for instance. And Shockton, which is a physical kind of a paper or a small paper that comes out with the Indo once a week, the Irish Independent. Okay, number 4 and last one, guys, we've got writing. And you can imagine what we're doing. We're essentially going to, again, just replicate what we would be doing if we were fluent or a native speaker. Anyway, and mainly we're going to be using Grammador as a great tool here. I'm going to show you how it works now. It's essentially an Irish spell check, but again, you could put a full paragraph or full page of Irish in and it'll pick out all the mistakes. Could be a spelling mistake, could be unlikely combination of words saying this is probably wrong, but you know, depending on what you're trying to say, it might be correct. It could be a fada missing, it could be the Tichel Ginnijuk, picks up on that. It could be the Mokaniluk, the Sivri here. More complicated things. It is seriously impressive. And we're going to show you how it works. And again, you can just write about whatever. So it could be how your day is going. It could be 100 words, 50 words, 2 sentences. It could be a page, whatever it is. You could write it down on paper if you prefer and then put it into this afterwards. All those are fine. So again, let's say I like the Formula 1 and I've got this written out here. Let's do it correctly firstly. So by Rosser Shul, Snastachentia, on Zer Shachtana Shul, there'll be a race going on basically in the United States this weekend. That's all good. What though if I was learning and I said Snastachentia? I said, I think that's correct. Perfect. Submit. Okay. So we had a bit of a mistake here. But Rosser Shul should be no. Now really that's sna because it's in the. So it changes to sna. And then it's correct. Perfect. What if I forget the fada on the A? Exactly, it means do you mean stotch? Okay, so I could change that. So again, you could write a full paragraph just about whatever you like, whatever you're up to that day, general stuff. Has nothing crazy specific, and you'll hopefully enjoy it, writing about whatever you like and being creative with it as well. And then, or you can literally just write down 6 sentences in English to test yourself. You could say, I liked what happened yesterday, and then try and translate that into Irish and then put them in here, whatever you want. Okay, whatever you want, whatever you enjoy, put it in here and see what mistakes come up. Okay, if I put a H in here, for example, it should pick up that there should be no H in there. Exactly. Okay, and then that is a knock-on effect for this, but once I remove that H, it should all be clear. Again, it is. Okay, so Grammador is your main friend really for writing and improving your writing in Irish. Because again, writing for some people is less important, but again, people think about writing a letter to someone, which most people don't do nowadays, but think about more so 2 things. Firstly, you do still write a lot, but now it's normally texting or emailing. You know, you do use it more than you think, or searching things online, putting up social media posts, whatever it might be that's applicable to your life. But also your writing is going to improve everything else, and maybe this is a good point to round off the 4 pillars, the 4 study methods we've gone over. Is, you know, the better you get at writing and the more mistakes you pick up there. Let's say, for example, okay, there's no H in on Ger Shachtana. Well, then I know when I'm speaking, I shouldn't put a H in it. So one of these helps the other. They all kind of complement each other, I suppose. Okay, so half an hour of writing might bring a writing from here to here, but it also brings the other 3 from there to there. It also helps them and brings them up. Okay, so a rising tide floats all boats. And also, yeah, correct it. So don't just say, oh, there's 4 mistakes. Oh, it's that one. Write it again or fix the mistakes quickly on your paper or whatever it is. Write down, add it to your list of different stuff you've learned. No H on this word, fada on this word, whatever it might be. Okay? Do not forget, guys, rotate all 4. Don't neglect any of them. Imagine they're your children, you don't want, or they're your friends, whatever. You don't want any of them to feel left out or neglected. Work on all 4. And work on your weak points. If you're great at writing, reading and listening, but your speaking is falling off, again, seek what you don't know, go after what you don't know, make it better, so then you'll feel more comfortable waking up every day, having a conversation with someone, knowing that you're not going to be in trouble, essentially. Don't run away from what you don't know. I'm going to get through the rest of it fairly quickly, guys, to be honest. Real revision. So that's the idea of, let's say I have my page that we saw earlier with law and on Wilmudge and everything else written out. That's great, but guess what? If I just write that down and I think, okay, I know that now. It's very easy. I do it all the time. I think, well, I know it now, so I'll know it in 2 days. It's the exact same thing as when somebody tells you something and you think, I'll make a note of that in my phone or put it in my calendar, and then you know it now, so you think I'll always know it, but you forget things. Okay, you'd be amazed by doing that method. Come back to it literally 24 hours later, 48 hours later. See how many of the words you can remember out of the new ones. It's quite tough. Even just cover up the Irish, look at the English, see you might be able to remember half them. So you have to go back over it several times. Okay, there's loads of studies about this in terms of having to see a word 6 or 7 times before you really know it, and so on. Again, I'd have no interest really in getting to the academic side of it too much. You know yourself, you have to see it a few times before you're gonna remember it. So all you do after you get through 3 or 4 pages filled up with these words, these terms, these phrases, just go back to the first page, pick out a random page every day. That's what I do with my Italian. Let's say if I have a load of different ones here, I might go back to a page from a month ago and I might say, perfect, before I do any study, any writing, any reading today, I'm going to make sure I know all these words. Cover the Irish, I can see the English, I go, that must be law, are we on Wilmudge, still, I don't remember the word for still, let me check, okay, it's fos. Keep on going through them, there might be 7 or 8 I didn't know, so I look at them, I cover them again, I go through them, and make sure you know them. Because again, it's easy to go over a word once, but if you're not using it all the time or going back to them, you're not going to remember it. Okay, so almost think of the roadblock analogy. We have to lift the roadblock, and then it slowly comes down, and as it comes down, we need to give it another belt up, and on the 3rd or 4th hit up, it just stays up, it disappears. Okay, return to random things. Yeah, be quite random with it in terms of what you go back to. It's a good way of testing yourself. And always make sure, as we've talked about before, you know the base stuff. It's very easy to get to a quite good level in Irish, then realise, especially with Irish, because some of the most basic stuff in terms of saying where you're from and who you are uses the copula, which can be quite tricky and strange in the order. So it's very easy to make mistakes in those. Always make sure you know them just like that. Don't be afraid to go back to that, even if you feel like it's way below where your level actually is. So not much of this has talked about learning things off. So what should we learn off, as opposed to just learning by using and replicating every day? Irregular verbs, you have a massive advantage in Irish, guys. You know, in most languages, let's say English, Spanish, French, you have in between 200 and 300 irregular verbs. In Irish, you only have 11. The verb to be, you'll likely learn off in your first few days of learning the language, if you learn it properly. That's again covered in the course down below if you're a beginner. Along with a lot of the other things and most of the other irregulars as well. So learning off the irregulars, and you know them, so that if someone says, did you go, it's Anyakitu. I didn't hear near Hulame. Okay, I will say Jerhime. That is just like that. Can be a massive advantage, because even though there's only 11 of them, they come up all the time. They're really common verbs, such as to do, to go, to see, and so on, to be as well. So learning them off, so you can just do past, present, future, and the verbal noun, which I'll touch on in a minute when we look at the glance card, can be very beneficial. Big 5 prepositions and their different forms. That's egg, air, do, le, and o. So again, they change from person to person. They're on the glance card, which we'll look at in a minute. So again, for egg, no one at me is ogum. No one at her is eki. At them is aku, and so on. We've talked loads about the profile questions, greetings, the question words. Obviously, when you're starting a language, you have no choice but to learn stuff off, okay? In terms of the main 4 profile questions, this is also covered in the course, is what's your name? And knowing how to respond to that. So, Cad Sandwich is Misha Liam, or Liam is Dum. Chowil tu idachoni, Tome imachoni is Seville. Ka Asu, where are you from? Is Asgaliev me in Erin. And then the last one as well is how are you? Kunstatu, or one of the variations on that, and how to reply to it. What are the main ways of replying to it? So learning off those as well when you're starting off, and defining rules. There's another thing over on Learn Irish Online called the cheat sheet pack, which essentially looks at stuff like the Muckneilach, the Sirri here, the numbers, some of the trickiest themes, let's say, in Irish, and breaks it down to the stuff that you actually need to know about them. And saying the Muckneilach seems really confusing. You need essentially 2 main rules for it, 2 main things to keep in mind, and off that you can kind of figure out any verb. Okay, so really breaking it down into defining rules. The Sirri here saying main thing, there's 3 things with Sirri here you need to remember. Okay, and once you can remember those, everything else you can figure out within the series here. Okay, if you're interested in that, that's in the cheat sheets below on Learn Irish Online. So learning off these defining rules for specific tenses and numbers and things like that. Okay, this is the glance card. I wouldn't recommend purchasing that many physical things to learn Irish, but this is the one you absolutely should. It is just a physical piece of paper on my laptop. It's actually pretty much the same size, about A4. And what it's got two sides. It's got this side and this side. This side has a lot of the most common verbs you'll have here, along with the 11 irregulars here. Has them in the past tense in red, the present tense in the present tense in the present tense in the yellow, the future tense in the blue, and the verbal noun here in the first white column. Also the verbal adjectives, that's stuff like in English, done, broken, burns, we've got there, cleans, and so on. Okay, it's really useful. Most of the verbs you'll be using, especially as a learner, are included on here. More than anything, it gets you used to the structure of a verb and the endings here. You see the NN for all the present tense ones, the he for the future tense ones, the H or the D apostrophe for the past tense ones. And you've also got one or two things. We've got asterisks here for some of the irregulars, how they might change when you ask them in a question. They're here, and so on. Okay, verbal noun, that's continuous and infinitive. This is all covered again in the beginner's course. So ag fágáil, ag fanacht, leaving, staying, and so on. The other side has the long verbs, the most common long verbs, and also up here it has your prepositions. Here are the big five, the five here, and their different forms. So O from me will be when, from you, which, from him, why, or from it, and so on. I would recommend getting glance card. You can buy them in any, let's say, school bookshop in Ireland, or you can order them online in Ireland fairly easily. I think it's Collins who publish it, I'm not sure. But you can get them easy enough. They cost €5 or €6. That's about it, and postage, obviously, if you are abroad. Okay, surrounding yourself with the language. So we've talked about the kind of active study, what you're doing when you're sitting down. You've got an hour free, half an hour free. It could be 20 minutes, doesn't matter. 20 good minutes is better than a bad hour. So we've talked about when you've got the time to do it. But what about passive stuff throughout the day and making sure that, you know, for a lot of you guys, your life right now is 100% English and 0% Irish, or maybe you're living abroad, maybe you live in Italy, and it's 80% English, 20% Italian. Because you have some friends you speak Italian to, and when you go to the bar or the restaurant, you speak Italian, but that's about it. So how can we make the English number less and the Irish number more? The key, guys, or one thing I want you to keep in mind is looking at this island. Where do you think this is? There's going to be a lot of people probably saying Inisheer or Inishturk or some island off the west coast of Ireland, or Tory Island, one of the Gaeltacht Islands. It's not. This is Tristan da Cunha, and it is the most isolated island in the world. Look it up on Google Maps if you want. If you draw a triangle in between Antarctica, Africa and South America, it's basically bang in the middle of that triangle. There's nothing near it. They only got internet, I think, in the last 20 or 30 years. The point I'm trying to make here is even if you live on this island, all of these things that I'm about to talk about you can do. Don't get yourself into the idea of because I don't live in a Gaeltacht, or because I don't live in Ireland, or because I don't live around people who speak the language or know anyone who speaks the language, or there's no Circle Cora near me. Doesn't matter. All the things I'm about to talk about you can do even if you're living on this language once you have an internet connection. Some of the things you can do even without an internet connection. Okay? Key thing is, the key principle here, maybe should have added this to base principles at the start even, is the mistake a lot of people do is they do what's written in red here. They look for stuff in Irish. Let's say a TV show is a classic example. They just find a TV show and say, okay, I'm going to watch that every day. But do you watch TV shows anyway? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But let's say even if you do, let's say you just pick off the first thing you find in TG Cahir. You find a cartoon or something, you think that'll be a bit easier to understand. It's kids stuff. Do you watch cartoons anyway? If you do, great. But if you don't, then why are you going to be able to watch them in Irish? Why are you going to have... I'm not talking about the level of Irish here. I'm talking about staying consistent. Again, this not being a chore. So what you want to do is flip the order. Look for everyday activities you do every day. I'll give you an example. For me, okay, stuff I do every day. I still write a shopping list when I go to the shop. So I write a shopping list. I don't do that every day, but I do it every week at least. I don't watch TV. I don't have Netflix or anything. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I write shopping lists. I go to listen to podcasts as well. I write down a lot of stuff pen and paper. If I'm writing out my plan for the week, my schedule for the week would work, I always write it out pen and paper. So I just start looking off, and you can make a list of all the different stuff you do. Okay? And then change those things into Irish. So rather than looking for something that's available in Irish and forcing yourself to do it every day, look at stuff you do every day. And I don't like the word force, but essentially switch it to Irish. So examples there. Okay, instead of listening to podcasts all the time when I go to sleep in the evening, which I do religiously, and them all being in English, why every Wednesday night, every Thursday night, why don't I listen to one in Irish or whatever language I'm learning? When I write out my shopping list, why am I always writing it in English? Why don't I write it in Irish? When I'm writing out my schedule for the week, when I write out, and I should have one here, for example, I write out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm not sure, will you be able to see this? On the top, I have L, M, C, D, and A written. Lún, Mort, Cadine, Zerdine, and Ina. Even very small stuff like that. I use WhatsApp all the time. I use Instagram all the time. Why don't I change those to Irish? You can't change Instagram. You can change Twitter, Facebook, Outlook, Google Mail or Gmail. You can change a load of the other ones. Anyway, TikTok as well, I think. Okay, Instagram is a rare exception. At some stage in the future, it probably will be available there as well. So look for stuff you're doing every day and just change it to Irish. So instead of 100% of your life being in English, 80% or 70 or 90 or whatever the number is in English, and then the rest is in Irish. Okay, some ideas, and again, these are kind of mentioned in one of the sheets that's available with this video for free, the PDF down below. Reading news online with the articles, speaking to yourself 24/7, we've touched on these. Following different pages, posting stuff in Irish, Insta, X, TikTok, wherever that might be. Listening to podcasts, shopping lists, talks about all these diary entries. What if you like writing diary entries, or you think that would be something you would like to get into? You journal, why not write a bit of it, even just the first paragraph every day. Ask Gaeilge. Changing your apps to Irish, little notes to self, notes on your phone, watching stuff on YouTube, sports matches, Radio na Gaeilge, the commentary, or TG Cahir coverage, music. Just look at these. What do you do every day out of these? Do you spend a lot of time on your phone? That's fine. How much of that can we change to Irish? Okay, and again, the main thing I suppose that underpins this is speaking to yourself in your head when you can. Okay, because that's the one thing that you're always doing, and we always do throughout the day. Books, podcasts, I'll leave those for you. Almost there, guys. Last few tips for you. Don't get discouraged. I know I've said this a few times. It's meant to be fun. It's not a big challenge. I think people think about it as a school subject. For most of you guys, there's no big exam in this. For some people there are. I know people who do the Hibernia exam to become a teacher in Ireland, and maybe they don't have the qualification. But don't get discouraged. If it gets difficult, if you find yourself stopping enjoying it, relax. It's fine. There's no rush. Rejig how you're doing your studying so it becomes enjoyable. As I say there, it's about the journey. Getting to whatever level X, like we spoke about earlier, won't make you happy. It might make you happy for a few days, but even then, when you get there, you'll just want to get better after that. So actually enjoy the process, and enjoy, even if you only have a small bit of Irish, really enjoy speaking it and listening to it, writing it and reading it, and do it in a way at a time of day with whatever people that make you enjoy it. Structure it in your own way that you enjoy it. One day at a time. Don't focus on the ultimate goal. As I said, that won't make you happy. Focus, as I said, on being better when you go to bed than when you woke up. Think about this time last year, if you've been studying for over a year, or this time 3 months ago, or 2 weeks ago. So if you get discouraged, think about how much better you are, and even if you can find stuff you wrote down, or find a clip yourself speaking from a year ago, it's a good way. I know you don't like listening to yourself on mic or whatever, but it's a really good way of seeing how much you've improved, and realizing if you keep on going, you're going to make even more improvements over the next 3 months or 1 year. Lastly, guys, enjoy it. I know I've said that 5 or 6 times. Enjoy it. It's meant to be fun. If you're not enjoying it, restructure it and have a good time. Okay, have a good time with it, and don't be worried about what people think you speaking it, or people saying it's a waste of time or whatever. Don't pay attention to them. If you want to learn it, you learn it, enjoy it, and fair play to you for doing it, because a lot of other people won't. I've got to the point of the lecture where I have no idea whether there's another slide or not. There is not. So perfect. We've got through it all, guys, and hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't speak too fast. I have a habit to do that sometimes when I'm left to my own devices. And speaking about different topics that I'm passionate about and that are interesting to me. Any questions, guys, please leave down below, or if people have any feedback, I'm always interested in that, and hopefully there will be more lectures like this coming up talking about similar subjects. If you want to get in contact with us, liam.learnirishonline@gmail.com. All the usual stuff is available with Learn Irish Online. Some of the courses and different products I mentioned are available below, but also a lot of free content over. Follow us on Instagram, Learn Irish Online, and here on YouTube if you are watching on YouTube. And we have our courses available over on the website. And as a full member, you get access to pretty much everything we do in terms of podcasts and videos over on patreon.com/Learn Irish Online. A big thank you for watching, guys. Very best of luck in your studying of Irish. And yeah, buin taithne vas as la Rome live, Cahan Lua fod slán go full.